Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Wright, and I am with Ohio Sea Grant, where I am the Aquaculture Extension Educator and the Program Coordinator for LEARN, which stands for the Lake Erie and Aquatic Research Network. In my position as the Extension Educator for Aquaculture, my job is really to be an expert in understanding the aquaculture industry in Ohio and the region. I interact with producers, associations, researchers, regulators, and consumers to develop outreach, education, and research programs and projects so that we can advance opportunities and success of the industry in the region and especially in the state. On this project, my partners were the Ohio Aquaculture Association, the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center, and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Wildlife. I'll talk more about all of those as we go along. One moment. There we go. So our project is called The Story of Yellow Perch, Understanding Ohio's Wild and Farmed Fisheries. So in the Great Lakes, aquaculture is very different than in our other coastal environments, specifically because we do not farm in the Great Lakes themselves. So it's not as prominent to most people. So the objectives here were really to make aquaculture relatable and understandable to a public that does not interface with it very often, and to provide further resources to deepen the understanding and range of fisheries products that are available in the region. And we really are considering this a foundational project for us, since up to this point, Ohio Sea Grant has not worked very extensively in aquaculture. So we wanted to use yellow perch to thread together a story of our wild and farmed fisheries. And really, the question was, can we tell a story that can reach multiple audiences? So when we look at yellow perch, we consider it a resource, a part of our recreational industry, and also a part of our food system. Our main wild fishery here is Lake Erie, where yellow perch is caught by commercial fishermen in the largest quantity than any other fish in the lake. We also have our hatchery system, where the state runs 6 state hatcheries that are raising in controlled environments and then releasing those fish into public waters, both to enhance populations and to be fished. And then we have our fish farming community, which exists inland and on private lands. And these fish farmers are regulated by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and are permitted by that agency as well. So how do we reach all of these different audiences and relate aquaculture to them? What we proposed to do was to create a series of physical materials and also online materials and tie in some other resources that we have throughout Sea Grant. So our first goal was to create these panels that you see on the left. We have one that is called Aquaculture in Ohio. The other is the story of yellow perch. That story of yellow perch really ties all of those pieces together that I just introduced. And then the aquaculture in Ohio goes into a little bit more depth on how aquaculture is practiced in Ohio and what that looks like. These displays were then put up in 2 different locations, and I'll talk more about that next. And we also made a traveling version, so that can be used at different outreach and education events. Because we couldn't fit every piece of information that we wanted to in those, we also expanded upon that by creating these different Did You Know panels as well, where we can share different facts and figures to accompany the panels in their different locations. And finally, we created these stickers and coasters that have a link to some online products that I'll talk about next. And one thing that I'm hoping to do with these actually is here in Ohio, we have a large fish fry season in the spring once Lent comes. And I think it would be really wonderful to get some of these coasters into businesses that are having fish fries that serve yellow perch to help educate people on the different aspects of where yellow perch exist and how they can be farmed in addition to commercially caught. So in addition to those physical pieces, we also have an online component, and this is still in production. But this past year, I was lucky enough to visit our state hatchery called St. Mary's. It's the one state hatchery that raises yellow perch, along with two of our fish farms, Mill Creek and Brems. And the goal here was to visit them at different stages of production, from spawning to harvesting, to document the different practices in different locations, to really help people understand the different ways that fish can be produced and the different people that are producing them and why they're in the business that they are in. And this will also, we do have another component of the display is that it has a QR code that will link to this story map once it is in existence. And currently it links to resources that Ohio Sea Grant has already developed related to aquaculture. And along with that, another way to tie in resources, we did also use a QR code that links to a website called the Great Lakes Fresh Fish Finder. And this is a website developed before and outside of this project in a collaboration between all of the Great Lakes Sea Grant programs. And this is a website that connects consumers with producers. And it gives each producer on the site both a dot on the map, and then that expands into a business listing for the business. So especially for those that don't have a website, this can be a tool. And for consumers, they have a variety of ways of searching for products, and then they're able to see in the product listing what each business sells, how they sell it, where they sell it, and so forth. And another way that I've been another way we've been able to tie in other resources is with this aquaculture family coloring book. This was developed by Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and especially when I'm doing outreach and education events, this is something that I've been able to use to kind of accompany the different materials that I have there as well. So different audiences that we've reached. One of the locations that we have at the display currently is the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. This is in Bay Village, Ohio, which is a coastal community just west of Cleveland. And their main goal is to provide education on the natural world through indoor and outdoor exhibits. Their audiences include pre-K through K students, lots of families, but really people of all ages walk through their doors. And in addition to that, another location is the Aquatic Visitor Center on South Bass Island. That's where we have Stone Lab, Ohio State University's island campus that Sea Grant operates, and the building itself is owned by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And the Aquatic Visitor Center is really focused on many different Lake Erie issues, but the building itself used to be a state-run hatchery. It's no longer used for that purpose, but indoors it still has one of the raceways, along with exhibits on the types of fish you would find in Lake Erie and some of the issues that face the lake. So through both of these static locations, we estimate between 80 and 100,000 people can be reached every year based on average visitor numbers. Lake Erie Nature and Science Center is open year-round, where the ABC is open from June through September. In addition to just visitors who want to walk through the ABC also hosts different legislative events, field trips of middle school and high school students, along with tours of Gibraltar Island and Stone Lab. And I would be remiss without acknowledging the Ohio Aquaculture Association, who was very helpful in developing the messaging for these materials. One aspect of this project that we had hoped to do was to bring a couple of producers to one of those legislative events at Stone Lab this past year, but due to logistics, that did not work. So eeBLUE was kind enough to let us use those funds to support participation of students and teachers in this year's Ohio Aquaculture Association conference. So some challenges, I really started from the word aquaculture and, wanting to help people understand what that word means. And something that I've really found here in the Midwest is that fish farming is a term, maybe an easier entry for a lot of folks. When you say the word aquaculture, again, a lot of people aren't quite familiar with that. So I think if we start with fish farming and then explain that aquaculture is the umbrella term that fish farming fits into, that might be a good approach in how we speak about this. And then another challenge is that these panels and materials at this point are static rather than interactive. So our opportunity then is really to work with our educators to develop programming and activities that can accompany these pieces to make them more tactile and interactive. And then also utilizing more farmers' voices through those story maps, expanding the species that we're looking at and looking at different perspectives. In addition to that, expanding partner locations. So we have a variety of aquariums throughout the state, many of them tied to zoos. And I would love to be working with more of them in doing some of this work as well. So I've really enjoyed seeing everyone's presentations and learning what everyone's been doing. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole? Thanks for sharing that work. It's been great to see it come together throughout the past year and a half. You've got some applause from Tanoia.
Nicole, hi, it's Kevin Main from Mode. I wondered how the commercial fishermen feel about aquaculture. Is there a conflict between those two groups? And is there a way that this could help, your information that you're putting out could help bridge that challenge? Because I certainly see that when I speak to fishing groups, commercial fishing groups, they're defensive. And so we need to figure out how to work better with that. Thank you.
Yeah, potentially. Yellow perch that is commercially caught in Lake Erie is a limited resource. So in terms of competition, that doesn't really exist. So there may be some misgivings or misinformation that people might work from in terms of that. But our goal is that, we want to expand opportunities for commercial fishing along with aquaculture. And so the Great Lakes Aquaculture, or the Great Lakes Fresh Fish Finder, for example, not only has aquaculture businesses, but also commercial farming or commercial fishing businesses. And one of our goals too is kind of to look at the landscape of processing for fish and whether there are more efficiencies that we can help create in that supply chain for both of those industries.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that we also try to point out is that to people is that there's a limited amount of commercial fishing coming in, so aquaculture can help stabilize those businesses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a question in the chat from Amalia. Hi, Amalia. She says, thanks for the presentation, Nicole. Any quick tips for folks interested in starting their own regional fish finder?
Oh, that's a good question. So I wasn't there at the very beginning of the Fish Finder project, but I've been working on it since. And a lot of that was really came out of the pandemic and some business that was being lost due to that. So I think it's become a tool to help make people aware of the industry in the region, along with the producers and their products. So I think in starting that, really having a good inventory of who is doing what in the states that you want to represent. There are other tools out there that represent different regions or subsets of the industry. So reaching out to some of those, one, for example, that focuses a lot on commercial fishing, though not exclusively, is the Local Catch Network. Another one is Eat Midwest Fish, who again, Indiana, Illinois, Sea Grant, who produced that coloring book, is responsible for. And they just feature food fish, for example. So there's different niches you can look at providing resources for as well, rather than the broad scope. So I think just kind of seeing what the needs are in your industry, and the range of businesses and products, and who you'd want to be reaching with that.
Thank you, Nicole. And Amalia's following up with awesome thanks, Nicole, and very helpful. And hi, Bree. Amalia and I just co-authored a paper together. So and Tanoya is saying thank